What's up, everybody? We missed you. It's Catfish on Ice with Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. Trade deadline reaction episode. I know it's a few days afterwards, but it took us that long to process it.
Yeah,
That's how we're feeling right now. The Preds are taking on the Sharks tonight, so we're going to take you into that game. It is a late night start. I'm on the East Coast here in Florida, so it's going to be a 10:30 Eastern time start. And this team has tested me to stay up this late to watch this team, but I'm going to do it. Max is going to do it. He's back in Nashville, but he's going to do it because we love this team. We're going to watch it. But Max, first of all, it's been like a month since our last episode.
It's been almost that much.
My apologies, everyone. It's totally on me, but I'm never going to put out an episode that I don't think is ready to go and I'm not in it. And me and Max both have full-time jobs outside of this podcast. And so sometimes life gets in the way. We just can't put out a podcast when we want to. But we're here tonight, and we have a lot to get into, obviously, missing a whole month between episodes. But the trade deadline just happened this past Friday. We did a lot of talking about the trade deadline in previous episodes, and some of it happened as we expected, and some of it was totally not expected. So we got to break that down. We are going to also get into the final. We're inside 20 games left in the season now. Preds are taking on the Sharks tonight. I'm going to go ahead and call that the Lottery Cup. What do you want to call it, Max? The Lottery Cup?
The Toilet Bowl. I think that's a fitting name.
Yeah. I'm going to call it the Lottery Cup, but the Toilet Bowl is fair too. I don't think, the thing about the NHL lottery, and everyone keeps saying like, oh, every time the Preds win, and I get where some of these people are my friends on through social media, but these people are like, the Preds got to lose. They got to lose. We're ruining our draft stock. And I'm thinking, Max, it's a lottery system. Just because you lose and you're the third worst team or you're the second worst team or whatever it is, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that draft position.
No.
So, we're stuck in that part of the season, Max, and it's so exhausting. And I'm not mad at the fans for feeling this way necessarily, but it's so exhausting because there's no way you can win. There's no way to feel good this time of year. If they win, you're ruining our draft stock. If they lose, oh, you suck, like we've been saying all season long. Like Steven Stamkos gets a hat trick, and you would have thought that everyone still hates him, which is fair. I know he's underperformed, but I was still happy to see it. I don't know about you, Max.
No, I'm happy. No, I'm happy to see any time that, I understand why the fans will say that they want the team to lose, but my big thing is, all I really care is I just want to see good hockey played, because at the end of the day, I honor the fact that like these players on the ice are never going to lose the game on purpose. They're going to do everything they can to win. So I'm going to respect that and hope the best for the players. And also, let me just say, you don't want the team to lose 20 straight to end the year. If they do that, that's indicative of if they can't find a way to win one game in 20 games, that's indicative of much bigger problems than just talent.
And let's also talk about this. They've won 3. They've got a 3-game winning streak going on right now. I know that it's too little too late. I get that, but they beat the Bruins, which honestly was pretty impressive considering the Bruins are still desperate and in the playoff race right now. That was before they were at the time.
They were at the time. At the time,
that was before the trade deadline.
Fair enough.
And then what's the game between that? Oh yeah, they beat Seattle, which that one I will give you total credit for, Max. Seattle looked like they could not be less interested in playing a hockey game that night.
Yeah.
That was, full credit to the Preds for winning, I guess. But that was a really hard game to watch. I don't care who won that game.
No, that was one of those games. It was a rare sight, but the Preds really took it to them the whole game. Besides a goal that happened 30 seconds in, the Preds were in control of that one.
At least the Preds show that they still want to keep playing games this season. That was right before the trade deadline. So the Kraken were kind of in a similar situation as the Preds in terms of protecting players. Tanev was kept out of that game or whatever.
Yep.
So, that was a really weird pre-trade deadline game. So whatever, but the Preds win, whatever. And then they have to go to overtime to beat the Blackhawks, who have actually been playing a lot better lately. And
Arvid Soderblom once again showed that Bridgestone is, remember, he goes to play so well, as a lot of goaltenders do against the Preds.
That guy was looking like the next coming of Dominic Hasek or Henrik Lundqvist, whoever, Martin Broter, whatever you want to say. That dude was looking ridiculous out there. But the Preds win in overtime, Steven Stamkos hat trick. You look, I mean, you're playing teams who are way out of the playoff race at this point. So take the 3-game winning streak with a grain of salt. I get it. But at the same time, we're going to preview it in this episode later, but we're kind of giving you a precursor. We're going to preview what do we think is going to happen in these last 20-plus games. We're now 19 games left, counting tonight's game against the Sharks. And then also, we want to do our dream first-round playoff matchups. And, of course, the Preds will not be included in that exercise, Max. I'm so sorry.
Man.
You know what's funny? Like 2 weeks ago, Money Puck, their playoff odds, was still giving the Preds a 0.1% chance, but that's gone now, Max. I'm so sorry.
I'm curious to know, wow, how many games are we out from, actual mathematical elimination? I don't even know the answer to that question.
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm really sorry to break that news to you that the 0.1% chance has turned into 0.0% chance. But be that as it may, that's the episode we got for you. And then we are going to take this live episode into the start of Preds Sharks, but we are not going to be able to take it all the way to the end. I'm so sorry. There's not enough caffeine in the world or other stuff to make me stay up late enough to watch the end of this game live. You guys will probably thank me later for that, because that would not be fun podcasting at that point.
No.
But we are going to take you into the beginning of the game, and we're going to get into all those topics I just mentioned. And of course, we are always brought to you by DraftKings with promo code THPN. And again, I'm so sorry, guys, that we have not put out an episode recently. Been taking a little bit of a break. Max has been busy with his full-time job, me as well. And then quite honestly, me being on the East Coast and not in the Nashville market, and also I work nights, a lot of times I catch the Preds games way after everyone else. That's why if you follow me on X, a lot of times I don't live tweet the games unless I'm happen to be off work. A lot of times I react to the games the day after, just because I'm way behind you guys sometimes. I mean, that's just part of being a freelancer. Me and Max we're freelancers. This isn't our full-time gig or anything like that. We just do it because we love to do it. And we appreciate all of you guys, watching the podcast, reading our stuff on Predlines. That's what makes us keep going. And we've made a lot of good friends along the way. And it just makes it all the more worth it. So we took a month off. Just because life gets in the way sometimes. But me and Max are both really happy to be here tonight. And we're really appreciative of the Hockey Podcast Network as well for platforming the Catfish and Ice podcast. And we love all of you guys for watching this podcast and listening. And we're here for you tonight. And so, of course, we have a lot to get into. And let's go ahead and get it going, Max, with our opening face-off of episode 263 of Catfish and Ice, with really breaking down Barry Trotz's comments, which we were all really waiting on. I mean,
yeah,
I really, because look, Barry Trotz to me has always been very forthcoming and very honest and genuine with everything he says about the direction of this franchise since he took over this general manager job. And even when he was a head coach, I remember him always being very well spoken. He's a class act. He's a good person. His reputation speaks for itself. But we have to be objective here as Predators fans. And I think there's still a small segment of the fan base that is holding really tight to Barry Trotz because they're so loyal to him. And I'm loyal to him as well. But I also have to call a spade a spade. And right now, it doesn't look good for him. It just doesn't. No. I mean, you enter this trade deadline being a very obvious seller. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, you'll get the pushback, and Max, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Sure.
So I'm going to bring you in here, but you didn't have a lot of assets to work with. And Barry Trotz is probably not going to come out and admit that, but it was the perfect storm in a bad way for Barry Trotz at this trade deadline. I'm not making an excuse for him necessarily, but he really did not have a lot of wiggle room at this trade deadline. Do you agree or disagree with that sentiment, Max? And also, what are your overall thoughts of what happened here?
I mean, he didn't have, a lot of mainly stars he can trade. The one that obviously got the best return for, the one that really jumped out was Gus Nyquist. So he didn't have any star players he could trade. That being said, it was clear it was a seller's market. You saw you saw guys get crazy returns. Who was it? Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde, I believe, from Seattle went to Tampa Bay for 2 first-rounders,
Yes,
which is pretty insane. Scott Lawton, I believe, got at least a first. I can't quite remember. I might be wrong about that. But then, one of our own guys, Luke Shen, we traded, essentially got a 4th rounder from him. Then he gets a 2nd and a 4th again. It's the
bad one.
Management wasn't there.
That's the one he's taking heat for.
Yeah, he's really taking heat for that one. It's hard. I haven't heard rumors that Michael McCarron could be had for a 2nd or a 3rd rounder, which if that were me, I would be sprinting to get on the phone before somebody changes their mind. Also, Colton Sissons, I'm sure could have gotten at least a 3rd rounder, which I would have taken gladly. A lot of people were even shocked at Gus Nyquist getting a 2nd rounder. And,
that was the best. That's really all we have to take home with right now.
Right.
Is getting a 2nd round pick out of Gus Nyquist, which kind of felt like a no-brainer. I didn't expect a 2nd rounder, but I'm glad we got it. But I mean, I can't look, there's a lot of people who are way more down on Tommy Novak than I am. And time will speak for itself on who's right on that. I'm not going to say they're wrong and I'm right because we don't really know. But my belief is, and I will happily admit I'm wrong, and I said that on X when it happened, that I think Tommy Novak still has a lot to prove and a lot to give to this league. And the fact and the analytics, I know a lot of people are anti-analytics. They're like, what's this analytics BS here? I go by the eye test, and I get it. There's an eye test crowd that goes against the analytics crowd. I get all that. But Jay Fresh, who is one of the most respected analytical people out there, calls Tommy Novak an analytics darling. Now, time will tell if that actually ends up being true. But I've always seen that as well on my research on Tommy Novak, that he does a lot of the things well, and you already paid him a couple, and Trotz came out and said, and we're breaking down his comments right now. Trotz came out and said that they didn't want to tie up the money in Novak. Basically, that's what he said in his post trade deadline comments. Is that was a little too much money to tie into Tommy Novak. I'm sorry. Maybe he's smarter than me. Maybe he'll prove to be smarter than me. But Barry, I'm sorry. I got to jump off with you on that one. I mean, you don't want to tie in money into Tommy Novak in that situation when you've got veterans.
You've got him under contract.
You've got future Hall of Famers who are also underperforming under this system. It'd be one thing if Tommy Novak was on an island and he was one of the few guys who are underperforming in this system. He's not. He's one of pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone on this roster is underperforming. So when I get the Tommy Novak hate, I understand that he did not live up to 2nd line center expectations. But also, and I called Andrew Brunette on this early in the season. Max, you can back me up on this. Early in the season, I called out Andrew Brunette because he was shuffling these lines up way too much. And I thought, let's let it play out. Let's let it play out a little bit. We're 10 games in. We're 15 games in. and Novak was out of the second line as fast as I could blink, basically. And
first game of the year, literally.
Yeah. I mean, so can we really say truthfully and honestly that Tommy Novak failed as a second line center when he really didn't even get the long-term? Like, if you were going to yank him that quick, then you should have had a better plan to begin with. If you didn't believe in him that much, you should have had a better plan.
Right.
I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't agree with, Trotz's thinking there. I mean, when that trade was made, I thought, the Preds didn't get a return. I essentially thought they were paying the Luke Schenn tax, if you will, but it seemed like they were paying the Tommy Novak tax, if you really think about it, at least from Trotz's point of view. Yeah, I don't get why he wanted to get rid of him that early. And it's one of those things, and last week I wrote a long article about Trotz talking about how, certain a lot of times, like, head coaches don't, turn out as GMs, and why, and how that's affecting Trotz probably. And, and one of the things I think, because a lot of times, coaches in general, they have to be really good at making adjustments on the fly and all that. And you can't think that way, the same way quite as a GM. And Barry Trotz really seems like he changed his mind, like, to win a lot of these players. Like, last year he really liked Novak, then the year after, apparently he had to get rid of him for some odd reason. He made a ton of trades in the middle of the year. Like, he got Scott Wedgwood and traded him. Went through this whole thing with Alexander Carey, then extended him, ultimately traded him. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. Barry Trotz seems to, again, I hate to use this. I hate to say this, this might be a lazy thing to say and might be kind of just maybe outlandish. I don't know. But it almost feels at times like you have a GM who's operating this team like he's playing franchise mode in the video game, where it's like, just like, oh, if this guy can be replaced here or there,
there's a really weird.
You can't do that in real life. It's not a video game.
There's a really weird dynamic going on right now between Andrew Brunette and Barry
I'll be right back. My finger's bleeding. I'll be right back.
Okay, you're good.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
There's a really weird dynamic going on right now as Max cleans up his finger there. Hey, fair enough. There's a weird dynamic going on right now between Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette. I mean, they seem like they're intertwined together, because under a normal circumstance, the organization would have every right to fire Andrew Brunette right now. I mean, you're talking about going into a season, making that kind of free agency splash. You have every right to fire your head coach at this point. I mean, you're flirting with the worst record in the league right now. So I think that there's a really just odd, peculiar, bad look dynamic between the front office and the head coach. And we're allowed to change our opinions on the fly as the season progresses. Earlier in the season, I was really patient with Andrew Brunette. I mean, I was like, give this guy time. He's in his second season, folks. Calm down, chill out. It's going to correct itself. It didn't happen. I'll admit I was wrong on that. I thought it would eventually correct itself way sooner. It still hasn't corrected itself. So I'll admit I was wrong on that. And I have to sit there and live with that now. But with that, how do you keep Andrew Brunette into 2025-26? I'm not saying you got to fire him right now, Max, necessarily, because what does that accomplish?
Nothing really.
But this is kind of going to get us into we're already starting to do it, but Max, now that I got you back, we're going to preview. Now we're 19 games left. We're playing the Sharks tonight. They do got a 3-game winning streak. We just talked about those 3 wins. Not trying to take any wind out of the sails of the positive vibes of winning 3 in a row, but we did just break down the 3 teams they beat in the circumstances. Take that for what you will. But I mean, these last 19 games, is Andrew Brunette coaching for his head coaching job into 2025-26, Max? Or is no matter what happens in these last 19 games, do you think his job is safe? Because Trotz already has him as the friend in the friend zone. Let's call it that, Max.
Well, I mean,
I just thought of that. I'm sorry. But
that's a funny thing to say.
Is Andrew Burnett in the friend zone with Barry Trotz?
Well, let's state the obvious here. When you have a season as badly and as not just as bad, but as disappointing as the Preds have had, no one's job is just safe. Everybody's job is under scrutiny, and Andrew Burnett's no different. Now, you've mentioned that you've changed your opinion on Andrew Burnett, whether or not you really think he should get fired. Maybe I'm the one who's still wrong on this. I don't know. I've said all year that I don't really think this is, again, I'm not trying to say anyone's blameless here. He has his faults, and I've talked about him too, despite that I've always said this. I don't think it's his fault, like in terms of like the main person to blame. When you think about this, I'm sure you agree with this too, Chad. Everything here, it all stems back to Trotz. Trotz is the guy that put Andrew Burnett in his job, knowing the kind of coach he was, where his system is based off speed, transition, 200-foot game, and also some physicality, but it's really the skating and the long passes and all of that. And Barry Trotz went out there, signed a bunch of 30-year-olds. This team is really old. They especially don't fit in his system. He went out, made a lot of really confusing moves at the deadline, which it's hard to still really know what he's trying to do, because, obviously the one devil's advocate, you could think of is that, the Preds needed bodies, especially in Milwaukee. But then he goes out there and says, I shouldn't have value for my guys. I don't know. And then
can I give a counterpoint real quick?
Sure.
We were mostly all of us were grandstanding for Trotz's moves in free agency. Sure. I'm not saying everybody. There's definitely some friends in our group, in our circle. Matt Hardesty, got to give you a shout out. And certainly others who were against the heavy free agency buying that Trotz did. But they were the talk of the NHL. They were a trendy pick to even go to the Stanley Cup. Yes, they were. So can we really bash Trotz that hard for at least swinging for the fences and he struck out? I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying
I 100% get that. And maybe I'm coping when I say this, but here's my very honest answer to that. The more you watch and the more you follow the league, you realize what works and you realize what doesn't. And sometimes you just realize what you thought was going to work doesn't actually work. And I think that's what we're seeing with this Preds team. We were excited about the acquisitions, about Stamkos, Marshall.
How could you not be excited about that?
Brady Shea, all that. Sometimes the excitement gets you. Sometimes you overlook a lot of things. And I think it's what a lot of people, including myself, did with this Preds team. We overlooked how old they are. The average age of this top six is like 33 and a half. That's absolutely crazy. They have no speed, which is hard enough as is to win the NHL. Now, with the system Burnett plays, that's especially harder.
And also, good point you bring up there, not to mention when Steven Stamkos is one of your fastest skaters.
Right.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a huge problem.
That's a good point you bring up. And also, so that does go to the benefit of Andrew Burnett, because he's not the one that actually goes out and signs the players.
Not at all.
But when you talk about superstar, just on paper, it looked good at least.
Yes.
But we got it on the screen here for our YouTube and Facebook viewers. Getting ready for Sharks and Preds. Preds are going for their fourth win in a row, believe it or not. Lineup and warm-ups, which is going to be crazy moving forward, guys. I know we're past the trade deadline, but I mean, look at that. Forsberg is on the second line.
Yeah.
Forsberg is on the second line with Sissons and Marchessault, which we're about to get into more of trade deadline reaction, because Sissons was someone that I thought for sure was going to be traded. So I'll admit my being wrong there. Stamkos, O'Reilly, and Evangelista are your top line. I will say, because we're so negative right now, let me give a shred of positivity, at least from my part. I like Evangelista being on the top line.
Yes. Absolutely.
I love that
Nashville's been
opportunity.
doing pretty well lately.
Look, he's not alone, but he needs to really have a strong last 20 games.
Yes.
Because he is the future. If we're going to call this a reload or a rebuild, Evangelista has to really show it for us. Otherwise, it's going to be a rebuild. I'm worried a little bit about Evangelista.
I'm starting to.
He gets overworked in the physical areas, Max.
Yeah.
He gets bullied around a lot. He gets humbled a lot.
And one thing I'll say, and hopefully where he's a good fit in this top 6 is hopefully, and it's not going to, of course, just do it, but hopefully he can be part of what balances intangibles and pedigree with skill and just talent. And that's another thing, too, going back to the offseason, that the time I, really liked the aspect, but I kind of realized over time it went a little too far. We know Trotz is all about that pedigree, experience, Stanley Cup, intangible stuff. But you got to balance it out a little bit. You can't just have pedigree and intangibles. You got to have speed and skill and all that. Like you look at the team like the Florida Panthers, perfect example of that. Their average age like 27. They're not so young that they just have they have no guys who've been there, done that, but they're not so old that they're just going to get blown by every game by every team they play. They're a perfectly balanced team in that regard. And the Pirates have just gone way too far in the other direction, trying to just make this team full of guys who have pedigree versus, okay, we'll have our leaders. We also need to have just our talented players. Not every player has to be a leader, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, so your top 6 looks like Stamkos, O'Reilly, post-trade deadline. The dust is settled. The smoke is settling, whatever you want to call it. You got Stamkos, O'Reilly, Evangelista. There were rumblings all the way up to the trade deadline that O'Reilly might be traded. I wrote my first article about O'Reilly possibly being traded in early December. It didn't end up happening. I wasn't even trying to predict that it would happen. I wasn't even trying to say that he should be traded necessarily, but I thought he was a trade chip, and it turns out he was.
Yeah.
Toronto was interested in him.
He wasn't interested in them.
Well, good for him.
Not interested in them.
And who was the other team? New Jersey.
Ottawa was also making calls.
And New Jersey.
That would have been interesting, I think.
It would have been. But look, and look, if somehow Ryan O'Reilly is around for the rebirth of the Nashville Predators, and I don't mean like rebirth like they got to win a Stanley Cup, but rebirth like we can go back to the good old days of being a Stanley Cup contender and making it to at least past the first round and going deep. And he's still on this team somehow, kind of like old school Mike Fisher was still on this team in his old days. Put a statue in front of Bridgestone Arena for this guy, because the loyalty that Ryan O'Reilly has showed for this team.
He really has.
Is pretty amazing. You don't see that in sports very often. And the fact that this guy is not a homegrown Nashville Predator, he's only been on, he's in his second year here. He chose to come here in free agency. I mean, the loyalty of this guy is insane. Again, I say this all the time. This is not a knock on Roman Josi, but Ryan O'Reilly is captain material.
Yeah.
And if Roman Josi was not in the picture, it would be Ryan O'Reilly's team as captain.
I mean, and I'm as big of a Roman Josi fan as they come. And if they didn't do it last year, I'm sure they won't do it. But like, it wouldn't surprise me at some point if like Josi hands over the seat to Ryan O'Reilly, or like, you never know if Brunette and Trotz will strip Josi of the seat. I highly doubt they do that. But somehow or another, I wouldn't be at all shocked to see if O'Reilly takes over as team captain, actually.
I mean, sometimes the captain role is overstated. It's overrated. Like, what do they really do? It's more of a namesake than anything, a reputation. But I'm just saying, like, I have a lot of respect for Ryan O'Reilly. I thought he should have been traded personally, but if he didn't want to leave, you're not going to blindside a guy who doesn't want to leave. So I'm not going to hold that against Trotz for not trading him. If O'Reilly wanted to stay here and be a part of the rebuild, the reload, the retool, whatever you want to call it. Right. So I do have a lot of respect for O'Reilly in that regard. He was the best trade chip you could have possibly hoped for. But it didn't work out and it didn't happen. And so he's here. And so we'll see how it goes. But last 19 games starting tonight against San Jose, I think it goes without saying, Max, that the first thing we want to see is a growth and developmental period for these newer, not just younger players, but new players to see what we got for 2025-26. Because this is basically these last 19 games are an audition for a lot of players.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at these waiver claims. Vrana and Osterley, definitely Vrana.
Yeah.
And Vrana looked really good in his Preds debut.
I noticed him a few times.
He's got a really good shot.
Yeah.
And he played for Trotz. That's kind of the connection there.
Yeah, go figure.
So I'm actually really intrigued by Vrana. I think Osterley is more of just a look. This Preds decor is just completely just decimated, ravaged at this point. I mean, it's just like throwing stuff on a wall and seeing what sticks. And that's no disrespect to your Blankenbergs and Statsneys and those guys, but this is not what we had planned for a decor. Not even close.
I wrote an article on like how many guys we addressed and what's it at now? What's it, 14 or 15, I believe?
It's crazy. Insane. Look, I'm actually going to put it on the screen. I got to get it loaded up. But Adam Vinian, the great Adam Vinian, he used to cover the team. He still does, but he used to actually cover the team full time. Now he's with 102.5 The Game, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
But he put out a really telling tweet here that I'm going to put on the screen for our viewers on YouTube. And if you're here right now and you hit a comment, throw in the comment section, and also hit subscribe if you don't mind, because we're fans just like you are. And of course, I'm having a hard time here finding this because technology is not always my friend. All right, hold on. I got it right here. But Adam Vinian put out the what the opening night lineup was and crossed out all the people who were on the team. So there it is right there. So let me read it. Let me read it off the screen for the people who are listening and not viewing right now. And so Adam Vinian put out, for kicks and giggles, here's the Predators lineup from opening night. I'm just gonna name the players who he didn't cross out: Forsberg, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Marchessault, Sissons, Evangelista. That tweet was before Jankowski got traded, so we'll mark out Jankowski. McCarron is still on this team. Cole Smith is still on this team. And then let's look at the decor. Yossi is injured right now, but he is still on the team.
Lausanne is injured and still on this team.
Yes, he didn't even cross those guys out.
No,
because they're technically still on the team.
Wow,
we have one defenseman left from opening night if you count injuries, and that's Brady Shea, who is grossly underperforming. That really puts it in perspective.
Wow.
And then, of course,
I didn't even get into like Adam Wilsby, who's out for the year.
And then if you really want to get into it, look at the goalies. Wedgwood's crossed out. There's no Saros because Saros missed the opening night game. I forgot about that. You got Murray.
Which is a game that you honestly probably the Preds would have won if Saros was in goal.
Yeah.
Which, how different is, I mean, it's one game, but how different is this season if the Preds end up winning that game?
The season was so doomed from the start. Wow. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that night when they said Saros was out for the Stars, and I was thinking, oh, God, we're already screwed.
Because a lot of people came away from that Stars game thinking, okay, this thing looks not bad. Like, you went up against a good team, one that has chemistry. We don't. Give more time. People thought this thing was going to work out.
Anyway, that was a really, really good tweet from Adam Vinian there because it really just put it all out there. But all right, Max. So the game is going to start in about 7 minutes.
That's right.
We'll keep an eye on it.
Yep.
In fact, I don't know if it was the last time they played the Sharks, but one of our last watch-alongs was against the Sharks.
It was, I believe.
Do you remember that crazy game, Max, where
how could I forget?
We came back and won. What were you down like by 3?
5-1, and we won 7-5.
Okay. Good memory there. So, Preds are going for 4 in a row at the worst possible time because all people are thinking about is draft position at this point. And I will say, to the defense of those people, this is according to every scout out there and according to a lot of just me reading scouting reports and mock drafts and analysis and all that. I'm not calling myself an expert. It's just me researching that stuff. It is a very top-heavy draft class.
Yeah.
And you really want to be in the top 5. Because after the top 5, from what I'm seeing, it gets very dicey. It doesn't mean you can't find a great player. It just means it's way more rolling the dice after you get out of the top 5. So knowing the Preds' track record of drafting, yes, they've drafted a little bit better in recent times, I would say. But yeah, I kind of want to be in that top 5. So I get where those fans are coming from in that regard, because there are some really juicy prospects in that top 5, if you're picking in the top 5, that fit the needs of what the Preds really, really are looking for, which is obviously offensive, bona fide scoring talent, most notably a center, a true center.
I mean,
a center that can join the NHL within the next year or two.
I mean, if you can get a really good right defenseman, I wouldn't hate it either.
Well, that's true. And it's so hard to find good right defensemen.
Right.
So we'll see.
On the Preds roster for sure.
The NHL draft lottery is unpredictable. Just because you're the 5th worst team doesn't mean you're going to get the 5th pick.
Just because you're the worst team doesn't mean you can get the 1st pick.
Exactly. I do think that it's very likely the Preds will be one of the 5 worst teams. I think they'll finish in the bottom 5.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to be the worst in the standings. I don't think they will be. No, they're going to probably win some games down the stretch. They got a hungry team right now. Stamkos is talking about, oh, yeah, we got to go out there. And I expect that from them. I mean, what do you want them to do? What do you want them to do, people? Yeah, I mean, you want them to give interviews saying, oh, yeah, we're losing on purpose.
That's what I like with a lot of these. And look, again, I know we have a lot of, friends of ours who have opinions like this, but it's like when you look at the players and coaches, even Trotz himself saying, we don't want to see the guys quit, we want to see them play hard. What else you can expect them to say? That's what they're supposed to do. No matter what the situation is, it's the job of these guys to go out and get 2 points out of 2 every single night. That's their objective. So why would you expect anything less? I mean, what would any player in the league say, young or old, seeing a team that was like, oh yeah, we're just going to lose games for next year? They'll be like, no, get me the hell out of there. I don't want to be part of this. I want to play meaningful games.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that.
And young or old players.
Yeah. All right, so the game is about to start here. We're about 4 minutes away. It looks like from the 10:30 Eastern time puck drop.
Game doesn't really start for 12 minutes.
Oh, okay.
That's normal. It normally doesn't start till 8 minutes after schedule.
And the Sharks are a team that are, they're in a different position than the Predators. They weren't expected to be anywhere. They're kind of where everyone expected them to be, right? And they also sold some players at the deadline. So, I mean, this game is very who knows what will really happen, honestly. But when it comes to these last 19 games, Max, we already said the youth. What else are you looking for? Starting with tonight, honestly.
I mean, I just hope UC Soros going to have a good end of the year. That's probably, if you
that's a good point.
Put a gun to my head, that's probably the biggest thing I'd really look for.
Yeah, it's been and look, I'm the biggest UC Soros backer. I will defend that guy all the time. And I still believe that his team has done him no favors in front of him. All you got to do is look at his goal support. But, I mean, he's got the worst goal support over the last 3 years among all NHL goalies. That's a well-known stat.
Is that actually a tangible stat?
Yeah. They shared it. I saw it maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was definitely shared on the regional broadcast, but it's been floated around on Twitter. I don't know the exact number, but I know he has the lowest goal support among all active goalies in the last 2 or 3 years.
Not a surprise, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't really surprise anybody to hear that. But look, that's not an excuse. Look, You expect him to be an elite goalie. He has definitely given up some really soft goals lately. His confidence looks completely shaken.
Yeah.
I mean, I have entered.
And I don't think the Four Nations face-off helped him either.
I've entered that territory with Saros where I hate to say this, but I've entered this territory with Saros where I'm like, let's just get through the first period. If you get through the first period without getting blasted for 2 or 3 goals, then I'm going to feel really good about your chances. But lately, it's like Saros can't even get through the first 5 minutes without getting exposed for a goal. And it feels like it's just a snowball effect from there. So I don't know. The confidence seems shaken. It's not a good spot to be in right now. If you're a Saros supporter like I am, I'll admit it. So I'm right there with you, Max. We need him to really channel some strong energy, and I think that's why they keep trotting him out there. Even though, honestly, what's the point? He's going to win. He's probably going to win you some games, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Probably more so than Justus Onanen might. And Justus Onanen, I got to be honest, has also not looked great lately.
No. And it goes back, I guess that goes back to the whole thing of goal support.
It goes back to goal support, and you also got a really broken down, shattered defensive corpse in front of you.
Terrible. Yeah, it's terrible.
I mean, there's no cohesion with the defensive corpse in front of them right now. I mean, they look like
the defense is one of those things that under Burnett's system always takes the longest anyway to get.
And they're chasing a lot of pucks. It's a roller coaster ride, is what I would call it, with this defensive corpse. They got some skill. I like how Nick Blankenburg handles the puck and makes things happen, but they're chasing the puck a lot. There's a lot of breakdowns, especially in the neutral zone, and these really fast teams are exposing the hell out of them.
Yeah.
And I got news for everybody. San Jose's got some speed. They don't got the talent necessarily, but they got the speed. So they're going to test this Preds defensive corps tonight, I believe. And it won't surprise me at all if the Sharks score 3 goals maybe tonight. And maybe
they scored 5.
And maybe the Preds got to score 3 or 4 themselves, which, look, we've been seeing a little chemistry from Stamkos and company and Forsberg. They're playing with a little swagger. So maybe it turns into one of those high-scoring games where the Preds find a way to win. I could see that happening. Maybe they get their 4th win in a row. But I don't see – again, it's not necessarily against – but look, you look at this starting defense. I mean, just look at the players. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just the way it is. It's not how you planned for this. You know, I mean – this is where we're at with it. So let's see if they can score some goals tonight. I think it's going to take some 3 or 4 goals, I believe, to win this game tonight. But before we get to that, as the game's about to start, let's tell you about DraftKings and the current offer. This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going, but that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out. Games left for you to get in the action on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. So go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. NHL and NHL team marks are the property of the NHL and its teams. NHL 2025, all rights reserved. So, Max, you got the game on right now, man?
I sure do.
Pre-game.
Yep.
I got to pull it up right now. I'm down here in Florida, as you know, and we're about to talk about our winners and losers of the trade deadline. And, Max, how about I get it going with a winner?
Okay.
And I'm not just saying this because I live down here in the neighborhood, but I got to say the Tampa Bay Lightning are a winner. They might be a loser, judging by how they perform in the playoffs. But
long term, maybe in the future.
Well, yeah, they have like no first-round draft picks.
They haven't for years.
In the foreseeable future. But they are loading up to win in this year's playoffs. They're right there in the middle of the division race, actually. They could actually win the division. They won 8 in a row recently. So I got to call the Lightning a winner because they went out and at least their GM went out and said, yeah, I'm buying. I'm going all in now because our window is going to shut now. So we might as well. We don't know how that feels as Predators fans, quite honestly.
Right.
But I can appreciate a general manager for saying, you know what? I want to win one more. I want one more. I'm not ready to let go of the dynasty just yet. I'm not ready to be a non-playoff team again. I got the money. I'm going to make the chess moves. I'm going to go out and get a Bjorkstrand. I'm going to bring back Yanni Gord. I'm going to do the things. I'm going to live with losing those draft picks for now. I'm going to put my chips in, and we're going to see what happens. How do you feel about that? Would you call the Lightning a winner?
Yeah, I would say so, and I think a lot of people would as well. You know, they made their team better, and one thing I mentioned in my article I wrote about Trotz, even though GMs have to think more the long-term plan, a lot of it's weighing the pros and cons, and if you think that winning now is more important than the long-term plan, do that too. It's all about having a plan, and they did, and they executed it, so good for them.
And when you're a team like the Lightning, again, you're kind of playing with house money with your fan base, unlike the Predators, because you've already treated your fan base to a dynasty.
Right.
So you have a little bit more wiggle room to say, yeah, we're going to go for broke right now. We're going to push the limit. We're going to see if we can make it happen. And, some of the fans I've talked to around here are pretty happy with that. Now you look at that trade, that 3-way trade they made with Seattle and Detroit, mainly with Seattle because they get Yanni Gord and Oliver Bjorkstrand, a really good offensive playmaker for the playoffs that the Lightning got there. They got depth with Gord. But Seattle gets a first-round pick, 2 first-round picks, 2026 and 2027, and they get a second-round pick in this year's draft. So draft capital wins the day there for the Lightning to get those 2 players. And then Detroit kind of fits in there kind of randomly. They retain 25% of Gord's contract and get a conditional 4th-round pick. So kind of random that they get fit into that 3-way trade. I'm just reading this off of Sportsnet right here. But yeah, I would have to call them a winner. Max, how about you throw us a loser? Honestly, are you going to address the elephant in the room first?
No, I'm trying not to, yet at least. Honestly, I would say the Winnipeg Jets
are a loser. All right.
Yeah, they had to go. A lot of their Colorado and Dallas, who we honestly might talk about here as winners. Yeah. I know I was certainly going to talk about one of those.
Yeah,
they needed to keep up with those, and they got Luke Shen. Who else did they get? Really, they didn't do it. They got Brandon Tanev. They were. I know they may not need to since they're that far ahead of their opponents, but they didn't keep up with them in terms of the talent additions.
That's a really good. I didn't think about Winnipeg at all when I was doing this exercise, but you kind of bring up a good point there. the only thing I can think of is they're really confident in the roster they got, which I understand that.
Right. Yeah.
That's
true.
But you're talking about a franchise that has really struggled once they get in the playoffs. They're kind of the new Preds in a lot of ways. They're a great regular season team. They've got a great goalie who everyone hopes can carry them to the promised land, but can their skaters prove it in the playoffs? That's kind of what the Jets are these days. And they didn't do anything other than get a little tougher at the blue line with Luke Shen. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a fair assessment. You know who I'm going to call a loser?
Who?
The Bruins for losing Brad Marchand.
I'm a little less hesitant to call them a loser, even though trading Marchand hurts. They got a better return for Brandon Carlo, actually, and that's also like that's a team that honestly they did really what they're supposed to do in terms of like the long-term fixing. Their cup window had closed.
But they're hanging around. Better. They're not that far off the
I'm not going to knock them
bubble.
I'm not going to knock them too much personally.
But they're not really that far off the playoff bubble. It's not like they're like completely buried like the Preds are.
No,
and
but like,
to lose a franchise legend like Brad Marchand, I mean, that fan base has to be hurting.
Now, for the return they got, that hurts.
That's kind of where I'm at with it.
I mean, his contract does expire after this year, though, too. And again, I seriously don't see a way that team was going to get any better in their pursuit. And I think I'm not too harsh on the Bruins. I respect them. You know, no, I respect them realizing where they are and making moves according to that.
And that was just kind of a trade that, like, even Elliot Friedman didn't expect that coming with the Panthers. But if we're gonna really make the quick switch around, I'll call the Panthers a winner.
Yeah,
because
absolutely
they get Seth Jones, who
that was a little.
Yeah, but you get the salary retained. It doesn't make it nearly. It's not that Seth Jones is a bad player. It's the contract that was so bad.
Insane.
So the fact that they got salary retained out of that deal and they get Brad Marchand, clearly Seth Jones wanted a new landing spot. He wanted to go somewhere new.
Oh, yeah, he was pissed.
So who knows if we're going to get the new and refreshed and revamped Seth Jones. So I don't know. I mean, they're going for back-to-back. I'm not saying they're going to necessarily do it. I'm not making that prediction right now. I don't feel confident enough to make predictions right now with 20-ish games left, but they did a lot to help their cause. I'll tell you that, especially with Matthew Tkachuk being out for as long as he's going to be out.
And Aaron Ekblad just got suspended 20 games.
Yeah, that was crazy. So, but look, they get Brad Marchand. That's going to help at least. They get Brad Marchand and Seth Jones. Maybe that can somewhat overshadow those losses they just took. But so I'll call that. Give me another winner if you might have on your list.
I think this will not surprise you at all. How about the Dallas Stars?
Yeah.
I mean,
I would say the
other two I had, probably them and the Colorado Avalanche, both in the Central Division.
So that's a perfect segue to talk about this Mikko Rantanen situation.
Yeah, this is insane.
I mean, a lot of stuff's coming out about this. A lot of drama. Avalanche fans are super rattled right now because basically Rantanen took, from what I understand from the situation, Max, and you can correct me if you saw something different, but how I understand the situation is Rantanen forced himself out of Colorado because he wanted to get paid max deals as high as he could get. And he deserves it. He's up there in the upper echelon of players. He's right up there close to the McKinnons and the McDavids and all those guys. So he's up there. But he is shooting for the moon on his contract, on his next contract, and he forces his way out of Colorado, his beloved Colorado franchise that loves him. And he ends up taking the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And he forces his way out of Carolina.
Yeah, it seemed like he never wanted to be there in the first place.
Gives them a 4-team list that he was only willing to go to. That included also Vegas. I think Toronto was on there.
Yeah, apparently he walked into Carolina on day one and said, "Oh, I have no intention of being here long term."
just a really odd, weird thing.
That is insane.
But
and it's honestly, because I remember we talked about this trade on the podcast like 3 or 4 days after it happened. You and I are both like, I cannot believe they traded Mikko Rantanen. But now, when you put the pieces together, it's starting to make more and more and more sense how that thing unfolded.
Yep. So so Saros just made a really good connect the dots save there.
Yeah, after Andreas England turned it over.
So we're about 4 minutes into the game now. Sharks got 2 shots on goal. I got it on my phone here, so that's why I'm looking off to the side.
Yeah, I got my TV here, so in case you see me just looking into the space, I'm just watching my TV.
But so the Rantanen thing, and it's going to really bring us into our next segment, which is but also I got a couple other winners I want to bring up too. I think the Senators are a winner in this trade deadline.
I like that. I like that.
But by getting Cousins and Zetterlund from the Sharks,
yeah,
and they're 3 point. They're right in the thick of the wild card race.
No, they might make it.
So I really like, and we've been talking about the Senators for like a year plus now. As hey, they're coming. Like,
dude, that's a team I'm intrigued by. Come playoff
They went through the rebuild process kind of like the right way that a lot of people think you should go through it in terms of build from within, build your prospects, make effective draft picks, but also make those really good free agency pickups when they're available. Like they went out and got Linus Ullmark, so they got their goalie who is showing out for them. And let me tell you, if the Senators sneak into the playoffs, they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah.
And now they got Cousins.
That's a team you honestly have to feel good about. That they were a team for a while, and part of my lack of a better word, but that's a team that was in the shit for a while in terms of what they were going through. That was a lot of turmoil from their late owner, Eugene Melnyk. Obviously, he's still very sad that he died when he did. But they were going through it for a long time. They were a mess for a while, but now they seem to be coming out the other side. And like I say, they're a team that's on the up and up, and I think they have a decent mix of veterans and young guys. I'm curious to see what they can do come playoff time. I really am.
One more loser I have to finish out this segment here is the LA Kings. They didn't do anything.
No, and Svechkov almost had a great up.
I would call the LA Kings the new Preds. They are a team that's
man.
They're gonna make the playoffs, but are they just gonna be another first round?
And there's an example right there of how going through a rebuild does not always work for you. They went through it for a while, and they came out the other side apparently, but they've not gotten out of the first round one time with their current core.
Who are they? And we're about to really talk about our dream first round playoff matchups, and we can look at the standings and try to kind of predict what we think might happen, so we can actually work on that. If you want to pull up the standings right now, Max, so you can start kind of like thinking about it. But who could the Kings likely play in the first round with this jacked up playoff format we had that's not 1 through 8, which we're also about to get into because it really kind of like makes it complicated, more so than it should be. But I want to share something that Drew Livingstone on X shared. Good follow that you should follow, but he put out, if the NHL playoffs started today, number 2 would face number 4 in the West, and number 3 would face number 5 in the East. Please bring back the 1 through 8 playoffs format.
Man, they need to.
And that's kind of going to show you, like, basically what we're thinking about here is Colorado is the elephant in the room when it comes to this format, because we all know that Colorado is going to be a very dangerous team in the first round. And if you look at the current standings right now, which Max also has pulled up, but you look at the top 3 in the Central right now, Colorado is top 3. 81 points. Dallas has 86, and Winnipeg has 94. I don't think anyone really expects Winnipeg to fall out of the top 2. But the way it works is 2 versus 3 play each other.
Yeah, it's weird.
And so you're guaranteed to lose a really good team in the first round every time.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
it's a weird format.
And Drew's post, the point of that post, he was ranking teams based on 1 through 8 rankings, not on their wild card playoff format rankings. So when he says number 2 would face number 4, he's talking about actual 1 through 8 rankings. So Colorado's number 4 in the West right now, and they would face number 2 Dallas. That's the point.
That's not right.
That's the point of Drew's tweet there. And then when you look at the East, he's circling number 3, which was Toronto, would take on number 5, which is Tampa Bay.
Which that's a little more realistic because, again, normally it's 4 versus 5, but still.
Hey, sign me up for that matchup, though.
True.
But yeah, so that's – and again – you're looking at the Atlantic Division, which is number 2 Toronto and number 3 Tampa Bay. A lot can change though, because if you look at that, look at the top 3 of the Atlantic Division right now. Florida's got 83, Toronto's got 81, Tampa's got 78. So
yeah, it's a
lot of movement there. The Metropolitan Division is a lot more spread out. Washington's got a 10-point lead over second place Carolina. And then you've got a 6-point gap between Carolina and New Jersey between 2 and 3. So the Metro Division is a lot more spread out. The Atlantic Division is going to be something to watch.
Yeah.
All right. So
it's going to be crazy.
Before we do some of our first round potential playoff matchups that were our dream matchups, we got the game going on here. A lot of empty seats, no shocker there.
Yeah, really.
But it's a 0-0 game. We're a little over 8 minutes in. The Preds, it looks like they only have 1 shot on goal so far. Not a good sign. I'm sure that anybody walking down the street could probably walk into that arena.
We got to fight. We got to fight.
Oh, we do have a fight. England.
He's been getting after it in the past few fights, in the past few games.
Yeah. Trading some blows. Good, healthy fight there. Going back and forth.
Luckily, Goodrow, another noted fighter.
Oh, I would give England the nod there.
There we go. Nicely done.
He's like, screw this. I belong on this team. That's what he's saying right
Dude,
there.
I mean, when he dropped the gloves versus Matt Rempe in the Rangers game, I mean, he endeared himself to a lot of Preds fans.
And there's Andrew Burnett with that same dumb look on his face all the time. Okay, there's what I was trying to share earlier from Drew on the playoff format. But yeah, so Max, let's talk about it. Dream first round playoff matchups. I mean, we already kind of just said it. I want to see a Toronto-Tampa first round matchup just because there's a lot of bad blood in that rivalry. I can tell you right now. I kind of want to see the Canadians come down here from Toronto and just invade Tampa and talk all their shit that they like to do and break their hearts again. So I really want to see that first round matchup, me being a Tampa native now.
This I think is going to shock a lot of people, and it's a matchup that actually would be happening if the season finished today. Seeing we also talked about a few minutes ago. One matchup I'd love to see is Ottawa, Florida.
Yeah.
Think about that. You have the Battle of the Tkachuk brothers.
Oh.
Which is fun. And also, that I certainly don't think Ottawa wins that series outright. But I think I think Ottawa could play them tough. I think, like I talked about a few minutes ago, Ottawa's got a good blend of, veterans and youngsters. One of their youngsters is Brady Tkachuk, who's even for a young guy, is the epitome of tough, physical intangibles, like that, all that kind of stuff. Florida, and we've seen a lot of years where going the whole LTIR route, Vegas, can help you a lot. But you potentially have Aaron Ekblad for sure and Matthew Tkachuk coming right off the couch, and that could mess with you a little bit. I could see Ottawa really giving Florida a run for their money in that matchup. And I don't think to them, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if they did.
I could see Ottawa being a Cinderella team for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a matchup I want. The ones at least in the West, at least right now, I'll be honest, they don't really compel me that, except maybe Dallas, Colorado. that's really it. It looks like we're about to get year 4 straight of Edmonton, LA, which is like Edmonton's just gonna cakewalk them.
So LA's got 75 points. Edmonton's got 78. Vegas has 83. That's how the Pacific Division looks right now in the top 3. And then you look at the rest of that Pacific Division. The next closest team is Calgary at 70. I don't think anyone expects Calgary to catch any of those top 3 teams. No. They're kind of just hanging around that bubble, which is pretty impressive. If anything, you got to watch for St. Louis and Vancouver to sneak into that bubble. You've got a really close race right now for that final wild card spot in the West between Vancouver, St. Louis, and even Utah. Utah's got 67 points right now. They're only 3 points back. So, if I'm trying to look at a bubble team that could make it interesting, I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say Utah. If Utah could find their way in, it could be fun. I mean, they have a young core of exciting players. I like Clayton Keller. They've got Vejmelka at goal, who they just signed to a new deal. So they got the goalie who could carry them. So I think it would be really cool if Utah snuck into the wild card spot and took on either Edmonton or Vegas.
I don't know. I would say if there's one team I'm gonna hitch my wagon to for the rest of the year or for the playoffs, I'm gonna say it's Ottawa. I really would like. I think they're a cool team for the playoffs. I'd like to see them do something. I really would.
And then.
And Columbus too, obviously, would be cool because.
Yeah, but
we got another fight, by the way.
I think the overwhelming. What'd you say?
We got another fight, by the way.
Oh, good. Who's fighting now?
Will Smith. He kind of got taken down. I don't know who he was fighting, but
he's always fighting somebody. Let's the overwhelming majority of people who probably want to see their most favorite first round matchup is probably Dallas and Colorado. I mean, come on now. I mean, can you imagine Rantanen going back to Colorado?
Okay. Maybe I'm into that one a little more than I gave myself credit for a second ago.
I mean, I'm just looking over the current standings right now, and right now Dallas and Colorado are 2 and 3, which is what Drew was talking about in his tweet there. But I mean, if you look at the wild card right now, there's a chance that matchup doesn't happen because Minnesota is at 78 points. They could catch Colorado and move into that top 3. But I am really hoping for pure entertainment sake that Colorado holds on to number 3 and they play Dallas in the first round. I really, really want to see that bloodbath.
That would be pretty awesome.
Like, I'm going to cancel all plans. I don't care if I'm supposed to go to a wedding. I don't care if I'm supposed to have a root canal. I don't care if I'm supposed to go to a funeral. I'm going to that game.
If it's my own funeral, I don't care.
Okay. You know what I'm saying. All plans are canceled. I'm calling my boss. I'm not making it to work. I want to watch Colorado versus Dallas first round. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But that
would be something.
But if Minnesota's been kind of like, I don't know, like.
Which I'm not totally shocked about because if there's one thing we saw with the Preds under John Hines, they were very streaky. There would be years that they wouldn't start well and they'd finish strong. Then they start strong, finish not so well. Now, the one thing I'll say in their defense, they haven't had Kirill Kaprizov for a while. So that we're going to have to wait and see how they do when he returns.
So
they're still, I mean, John Hines-led teams tend to be very streaky.
Yeah, Minnesota's 5-5-0 over the last 10, whereas the rest of the top of the division is trending up. Colorado is 7-2-1. Dallas is 8-2-0. Winnipeg is 6-3-1. So where is Minnesota going right now? They're safe in a playoff spot. They're 9 points ahead of falling completely out of the playoff race. So they're probably safe when it comes to making the playoffs, but they've still got something to play for if they want to get into that top 3. But again, this jacked up playoff format, what are you really playing for to get in the top 3? You're playing to play Dallas in the first round? Like, really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, would you rather play Dallas or would you rather play Winnipeg or Vegas? I don't know. Like, if you're in the wild card, you play one of the division leaders. I don't know. This playoff format's so dumb.
Either way, they always say you always go into every game trying to win no matter what.
I don't know. I don't think you're necessarily trying to play Dallas in the first round. That's my point. If Dallas ends up being the second place team in the Central Division,
which they probably will,
is that really a prize to work your way up to number 3 to get to play Dallas in the first round? I'm not so sure about that. That's my point.
Yeah. Who knows?
But I want to see Colorado Dallas. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious in the first round.
Yep.
All right. Are we missing anything, Max? We previewed the last 20 games. I do want to put one thing on the screen to leave everybody. I thought this was pretty well said. It came to me before, the other night. I'm in the bar business, and so I've been in the bar business for 15 years, and I the only thing I can think of when it comes to Barry Trotz getting the GM job.
Oh.
What happened?
How did they? I thought Forsberg was going to score. I thought he had an open net, but I guess not.
He's been scoring a lot lately. He's been looking good. I'm gonna put it on the screen here. I want everyone to tell me if they agree or not. But this is kind of how I see the whole Barry Trotz situation right now. I have the utmost respect for Barry Trotz, by the way. But look, I've been in the bar business for 15 years now and counting, and maybe what happened with Barry Trotz as the Predators general manager is like taking a really good sous chef and saying, hey, you cook a damn good steak, so we're throwing you on the main bar tonight on a Friday night. Hope you can make a good martini.
Yeah. No, I mean,
just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at another thing.
No, being a head coach and a GM require two different skill sets. And go again, I can't break down my whole article here. It was 2,000 words but go look at my, I believe, second to latest article now for Predlines, talking about how, again, a lot of it was pure speculation on my part on that article. But a lot of it, if you knew how Barry Trotz worked in his old days as a coach, it would make sense. Again, there's just two complete, because again, the ultimate thing I come down to when you're looking at head coach versus GM, and this is where Barry Trotz it's probably hurting him a little bit. As a head coach, your job is to evaluate what can I accomplish this very game, this very night. As a GM, you're thinking, okay, what am I trying to accomplish not only tonight, but for the future, and how is that going to affect my team down the line?
Yeah.
You're totally different things. And Barry Trotz was great as head coach. And quite honestly, I mean, that's okay. I mean, not for the organization. I mean, they might be screwed up. For Barry Trotz himself, it's okay if he's not, if being a GM just isn't for him. It just might not be. But he's a great head coach, and he's still going to be an NHL legend. But being an executive just may not be his thing.
I will say that we got to give him a little bit more time, obviously, because we got to see what happens going into next season. We didn't even talk about Michael Bunting tonight, who was part of the Tommy Novak trade. Hardworking guy, goes to the net, like maybe fits the Trotz culture that he's looking for. I know everyone's saying, oh, he's just going to be flipped next year. It's way too soon to know that for sure. So that's another thing. In the final 19 games here, he's not playing tonight, but can they find is he really going to be a top 6 answer to this team?
No. I doubt it. I highly doubt it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely doesn't move the needle in terms of like getting to where we need to go in terms of a true rebuild.
And even if you do want to trade him, like, are you still banking on that? Like, how do you bank a year in advance that you're just going to get something in return for him next year?
He's only signed for one more year, so like I'm trying to figure out like what's the best case scenario here with Michael Bunting. He shows out and plays really good next year, and you trade him. That's the best case scenario, I guess.
There's a ton of what ifs with this Preds team right now.
It's really sad to say this, but I'm most happy about Vrana because you got him for nothing. I mean, and maybe he works out. I like that waiver claim.
I don't know. Either way, no matter how, like, again, I get the waiver claims in the sense of like, Trotz needed bodies here or in Milwaukee.
Breathing bodies, yeah.
Right. But like, it still does not answer the question of like, the what the plan is. And I've heard Trotz talk before, so I somewhat see where he's coming from. Like he's always said, like in his perfect vision, he'll have like his top 6, and then the younger guys kind of filling at like the bottom end of the top 6 and like the top 9. So like I understand, because if you're asking these guys to play big top line minutes, then like it will ruin their confidence and stuff like that because they're inevitably going to make mistakes. What do you have to lose at this point in the season, though? Like it's over. You're effectively playing with house money if you're these younger guys.
I'm telling you, Trotz is trying desperately to reload whatever he can for 20. He is living in a I don't want to call it a fantasy land, but he's definitely living in an alternate reality right now that a lot of fans are not living in when it comes to we can still make this work in 2025, 26. I think he realizes it's not going to work this season because mathematically speaking, it's not going to work. But that's the only thing I can make sense of what he's doing is he wants to keep Colton Sissons around. He wants to keep Ryan O'Reilly around. He wants to keep these culture guys around because he thinks that this season was a one-off. This season was a fluke. This season was weird. The analytics say that we should have scored more. The expected goals, all this stuff, the shooting percentages are way down. Something tells me in Trotz's ear, someone's chirping to him and telling him, hey, this season was weird. It was a fluke. We can run it back next year. I could be wrong. I'm not in the room.
I would get that to some extent. There's been a lot of injuries and just guys, like I said, it's effectively guys forgetting how to score goals. I get, but like, I don't know, there's still a ton of other problems. Like I say, the fact that this roster is so old, they need to get younger too. I mean, I don't know. I think there's there's got to be a lot of evaluation of thinking like, what are we doing here? Are we taking the right approach?
To answer Johnny's question there, no, I do not recall that trade. That was very early in my days as a Predators fan, and that's not a trade that I would remember. I do know Cliff Ronning. He was like
I don't even know him.
Cliff Ronning was basically the veteran leader of the early days of the Predators, but I don't know the guy that was traded. I do not, but I'm assuming it was not a good trade.
Yeah.
But yeah. Again, it's time will tell. Let's see what Michael Bunting does. I think your best case scenario is you trade him next year, kind of like what you did with Gus Nyquist this year. Honestly, like what are you going to do? Right. You traded for him this year to hopefully get a second round pick out of him next year. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I just really don't get it. Like, we still have to see what happens in free agency. And that is a very important caveat there. That could change the whole outlook again of 2025-26. Judging off what Trotz does in free agency, which is way too far ahead of time for us to even talk about right now. But I'm just saying a lot will still change and definitely will change according to Trotz before next season. So, but I'm telling you guys, he is going to reload. He is not in the camp of what a lot of people are when it comes to this team is cooked and we're going to have to rebuild for a few years. Trotz does not see it that way. That's why he's keeping these guys around. We could all end up being wrong. Let's see what happens.
I'm wrong.
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong too. We all hope we're wrong. But with that said, we are going to sign off here. Thanks for joining us. Sorry for the long break. Hopefully we'll see you again soon if time permits. But until then, this has been Catfish on Ice, episode 263 with Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. Hit subscribe on YouTube below. Hit the comment section. We appreciate you. Follow us on X at Catfish Ice. And we're brought to you by DraftKings with promo code THPN. We'll see you soon, everybody. Enjoy your weeks. Take care.
One thing I'll say, too, if you're watching the games this weekend in LA, look for me on TV because I'll be there.
All right. We'll watch for you, Max.
There we go.
All right, everybody. Take care. See ya.
See ya.